Okay, so this should be a quicker one. Just listening to a video about, oddly enough, about, like, translations and stuff from, like, localizations from Japanese to English and English to Japanese, depending on the media. But one thing that stuck out was they were talking about a moment in BoJack Horseman. And in the English, it's an interchange between the characters Diane and BoJack. And they're talking about another character that has been slumming it on BoJack's couch for like a decade. And in English, Diane says something like, "Oh, Todd thinks the world of you." Todd's the slumming character. And then BoJack retorts, fuck, I forgot. Todd thinks the world of Pop-Tarts, to kind of disparage that, what Diane is saying, and point out how fickle Todd is, but mainly it's just like an edgy joke to cut down the conversation. Whereas in the Japanese, which, like, there's some localization stuff, which I actually found the video really interesting. I guess I'll link it in the description. But anyway, in the Japanese, instead it translates to, or if you're going to translate it back so we can understand it, it roughly means like, Todd respect loves you, which is a word that makes more sense in Japanese, just like highly regards you. But then BoJack does the same thing. He retorts in a way to cut down the conversation and turn what Diane is saying back on her. But instead he says, Todd Gay loves me, which is a fairly homophobic joke that isn't, like, super funny on its own. Just like, oh, he thinks the world of you, he's gay. But it got me thinking about how, you know, sometimes in character, your character is going to do things like that, and is going to deliberately fuck up a situation, depending on how they feel about it, and depending on what's going on. But it reminded me of a situation that came up fairly recently in our D&D game, or in one of the campaigns I play in the Ugliest Man Alive campaign. There was a sequence where we were all sailing on this ship down a river, and the boat got beset by a group of Swagans and then by a Hydra. So we had to fight all those, and we ended up losing like 90% of the sailors that were helming the boat. Helming? Sailing? Shipwrighting? The sailors that were working on the boat, we lost a bunch of them. And then after the situation resolved, the one, like the first mate character, the character we respected on the boat, this big tabaxi experienced sailor dude named Talon, he was expressing, you know, a little bit of grief that he lost so much of his crew. And our druid, who the player has since dropped out of the campaign for unrelated reasons to this moment. Like, they say something embarrassing and leave the campaign. That's not what happened. Real life stuff. So, the druid responds saying something, I can't remember exactly, so I'm going to paraphrase. Just like, everything dies in the end. They're returned to the dirt where they came, something along those lines. I can't remember the exact thing, but that was the sentiment. And this almost pissed Talon off. Like, what the fuck are you saying? My whole crew just died. Why are you basically saying that's a good thing and it's what should happen? Then one or two of us had to kind of intervene and diffuse that situation a little bit. But one of the main points about that was, one of the reasons it was an issue was that the player didn't realize exactly what they were saying. Like, I imagine they thought that this was going to be well received, and it was just like a druidy thing to say, without really thinking about the context of the situation, the personality of the NPC they were talking to. Like, they just thought it was a cool quip to say, pretty much. And it ended up causing an issue. Now, if instead you understand those contexts, and you say a line like that anyway, because one, it's what my character would do. Ignore that line. It's what the character would say in that situation, but you understand the context and the personality of the NPC you talk to. You might say that line, and then maybe add in, like, but it is regrettable it had to happen so early, or, you know, something like that. You change, you still get across that sentiment, but you add in a little bit extra, like another line to contextualize exactly what you're saying. But judging by the player's reaction after we talked about it, they did not understand those things. They were just putting out a druidy quip. That's all it was. Because they were very confused why Talon would be upset with them. It's like, it's not obvious to you? And these are the types of things you can run into if you kind of ignore context or you can't pick it up. Because this isn't exactly the first time that player and that character has done that type of thing. Like way back at the start of this campaign, we were on a different ship. Lots of ships. 2 so far. That's a lot of ships. Actually, there are a few more ships. Anyway, at the beginning of this campaign, we're all on a boat on this passenger ship across the ocean, like going around the continent. And we're introduced to each other and to this group of Bound Sword, like, adventurer guild people. And I'm playing a fighter. And I notice there's another fighter in the group. I'm like, oh, cool, we got time on the boat. I'm going to challenge him to a sparring match. That'll be fun. I know he's higher level than all the player characters, so he's going to whoop my ass. But I know that. It's going to be fun. And then, before I get a chance to, you know, I'm not going to, like, rush straight to it. I want to, like, talk to the ship, talk to all the NPCs, maybe do this sparring thing on the next day or something. And before I get a chance, the druid challenges the fighter to a sparring match. And then turns into a wolf. Now, one, they didn't explicitly know that I was going to challenge the fighter to a sparring match. And, you know, that's their character. They can act however they want. But, like, that's kind of a logical thing to do that the fighter would do. And I felt not offended or anything, but like, oh, well, that option's not as interesting now. I'm still going to do it, and the next day my character sparred him. But it was just like, that kind of thing can take the wind out of your sails. And, like, that instance is not the same as the first example, but that is an instance on effectively stepping on the toes of other characters. You know, like, if you've got a rogue in your party, and you design a character that's, like, not a rogue, but you, like, grab all these stealth amplifying stuff and you take the rogue's job, what does that leave the rogue? What are they going to do now? How are they going to feel like they're important to the party and they're unique? They bring something unique to the party's capabilities. So that was a really strange moment for me, and I felt really weird about how to relate to this party now, that the druid is just gonna kind of do everything. And since I played with that particular player, that's kind of a lot of what they did. Well, not exactly. They tried to be active in as many situations as they could, and it made enough sense, and they were also playing a moon druid, so there's that. they could participate in almost any situation. But yeah, that particular first example was very strange to me, especially because our party paladin already had the idea that, like, okay, the fighter's going to challenge the other character to a sparring match, and then I'm going to watch, and then maybe also do a secondary kind of sparring match. But, you know, my character's not going to be as directly good at it, or, you know, whatever. Whereas instead, because, like, there were already 2 sparring matches, they're not going to do it 2 just, like, to pile in. So that was another character that was affected in this particular instance. And also, like, this is one of those, like, finer points of role-playing in a TTRPG in general. Like, figuring out what the other players are going to do, how they're going to play their character, what they like to do. And if you've got, you know, a fighter in your party that shows up and he's got all these weapons all over him, and he seems to be like a martial arts type, he's probably going to spar someone. Like, that's not hard to figure out. And then on the flip side, if, as a DM in that situation, if I had caught it, because I probably wouldn't have. Like, that was the first session. It's very easy to get overwhelmed in the first session. But theoretically, if I had caught it, it might have been that other fighter, like, okay, yeah, sure, we can spar, and then the druid turns into a wolf. I don't spar with wolves. If you want to spar, here's a sword. That might have been what I would have done, but then that's shutting down what that druid player wants to do, which goes against that concept of, you know, you go along with what the players want to do. You twist it and change it depending, but, like, the big thing the druid wants to do is spar the fighter as a wolf. So, theoretically, who do you have to side with? Whose intentions are more important? And it gets real noodly, and there's no right answer there at the end of the day, I feel. So, the way it went was fine. There's no fault, it wasn't like a problem. It wasn't like something I'd take grievance with. If anything, it affected how my character thinks about the druid. It affected his relationship with this druid, which ended up going nowhere because right after that, that player stopped attending sessions, and we didn't see him again for like 6 or 7 sessions. It was a while before he even showed up again. And at that point, all the like lingering animosity I just kind of forgot about. And it was just like, all right, yeah, here's the druid. He's like, he talks sometimes. He's usually really quiet. It's like he just became like a non-character. Which, that is actually the issue. That's an issue. But this specific sparring thing, it's not really an issue. It just affects how the characters relate to each other, which is good. You want to affect how the characters relate to each other. But yeah, I'm almost at the job, so yeah, it's pretty much wrapped up. Yeah, in summary, it's just, you know, you can deliberately say things that are going to piss people off or not going to be the right thing to say, but they have to make sense for the character, and it's always a lot easier to twist those things provided you understand the context, you understand the characters you're talking to, and like you understand more than just your character, which is something I feel a lot of players, not necessarily the players I play with, but players in general just kind of do. They understand their character, and they just throw out interactions into the world and rely on the DM to resolve it. So, yeah, I guess this was an advice one.